I feel there's something I should tell you before we start. Hi, so welcome to my car. It's nothing fancy, but when I bought it, one of the killer features that it had was the 3 drive modes. First you have Eco, which is more ambient friendly, makes you waste less gas. Then you have normal mode, and then you have sport mode, which basically turns this SUV into a Ferrari. Well, not really, but the screen goes red and the car goes vroom vroom a bit more. The thing is, after just a few weeks of using it, I want you to guess how many times I've actually used the sport mode or the eco mode. And if you're guessing never, you're right. And that's why, in this review, I'm not going to go over every single feature that the Zoom L-12 has to offer. I'm going to do something much better than that. I'm just going to tell you about the features that I actually use and what I like about it, and what drives me absolutely nuts about it, after about a year of using it as my main recorder, mixer, and audio interface for when I do hook it up to a DAW. Hi, welcome to the midlifesynthesist. Let's get started. As an extremely quick recap, for those of you who did not see my first video, the Zoom L-12 is a 12-channel mixer, recorder, and audio interface, all rolled into one. You get 8 mono channels and 2 stereo, as well as a built-in EQ and effect sense. What makes the Zoom L-12 special, compared to a normal mixing table, is its built-in recording option, where you can record each individual track into an SD card, as well as a master track with all the EQ and the effects cooked in. Another awesome trait is its capability to send 5 individual mixes via headphone outputs, which has the original intention of helping out a band in a practice session or a live situation by sending out personalized mixes for each player. So the mix for the vocalist might have the drums all the way down, while the mix for the drummer might have the bass all the way up. Sorry to interrupt. While I was editing the video, I realized that I made a huge oversight. See, the last time we talked about the L-12, I was really excited because I was planning on using the individual headphone output mixes as a way to hook up my synths to my samplers without needing to be switching out the cables all the time. However, I ended up discarding that setup because the audio signal output coming from the headphones was just too low and too noisy to be useful in a sample mode. Well, it's worth a shot, I guess. Anyway, back to the video. Each mono track also has built-in compression and gain control, which is extremely useful when you're trying to get those levels just right, as well as phantom power, high Z, and pad options. The cherry on top is that you're able to save all these settings into one of 9 assignable scenes, which you can immediately recall later on. The first time I talked about the Zoom L-12 on the channel, I was completely in love with it as my one-stop solution for dawless jamming and recording, as I had it for just a couple of days or weeks if I remember correctly. So now that the honeymoon is over, is the love still there? These past few months, many of you have asked me how the Zoom L-12 fared when compared to other dedicated interfaces, like an AudioFuse or my old Scarlett AT920. To be honest, I can hardly tell the difference in audio quality, if there is any at all, but I did have some latency issues at first when I was recording straight into the DAW. Now, this was easily solved by adjusting the sample rate in Ableton, but still something you might look out for. But that takes me to the actual use I give to the Zoom L-12. Just like the Sport and Echo feature on my car, I hardly ever hook it up as an audio interface. 99% of the time, I use it for what my original intent was, a fast recording solution that would just take seconds for me to set up and start playing around with. In that aspect, this thing has been an absolute godsend, and it completely modified both my music creation process and my recording workflow in the best way possible. Just a few button presses here and there, and all my synths, my guitar, and my bass are ready to roll, and I can just track them all individually onto an SD card. That being said, my workflow nowadays looks a bit like this. I jam my heart out until I think I have something that's worth recording. Then I record multiple takes on the Zoom L-12 until I feel I'm happy with it. Then I just pop out my SD card, drop in the audio files into Ableton, and start editing everything from then on. It's the fastest and most productive workflow I've ever had to date, combining the speed and the immediacy of hardware with the flexibility and the power of a DAW later on in the process. However, with that being my main MO, the truth is I have little use for many of the other features that the Zoom L-12 has in terms of EQ and effects. To be fair, they are quite competent, but nothing to really write home about, as most effects on these mixer tables usually tend to be. If COVID ever stops being a thing and I get the urge to actually play live somewhere, I might make use of those features, but in everyday actual use, I mostly tend to ignore them, as I use dedicated effects pedals and I have much better EQ plugins in Ableton. Now, not everything is rainbows, unicorns, and frogs with silly hats though. There are a few quirks that really get on my nerves on this thing. They are mostly minor, but they have caused me bouts of unhinged rage from time to time. You see, before the L-12, my dawless recorder had always been the Zoom H6, which I still use to this day to record the spoken audio on these videos. As you can see, when you click record, the H6 starts, logically recording all ARM tracks. On the L-12, on the other hand, this is a two-step process. You hit record, and then you have to click play for it to actually start recording anything. That first record click is more of a master arm, you see? Now, I can get that this might be standard in a mixer like this, but I am not ashamed to admit that I have lost countless sessions of music and recorded audio commentary thanks to that little difference in operation. Plainly speaking, I might click the record button and it might take half an hour before I realize I didn't hit the play button and I just lost everything. From the bottom of my heart, if anyone in Zoom ever watches this video, please oh please make a firmware update where I can activate one-click recording and end my suffering once and for all. The Zoom L-12 does have an auto record feature where you can set a threshold and it will start recording when you reach that volume, but it's not the same thing. By the way, if you're enjoying this content, I would really appreciate it if you could take a second to click that like button, because it really helps the word spread and I really like being here. Thanks a lot. The other gripe I had with it was that in order to use it as an audio interface with the DAW, you immediately lose a stereo channel, which is assigned as the USB output for your DAW. I'm not sure what the technical limitation here is, but I would have much preferred if you could just assign the master output to be the default out when hooked up to a computer and not lose that stereo channel. This can be especially annoying when you just need that last input to record every synth on just one take. So after about a year of using the Zoom L-12 extensively, here's my final take. For anyone out there who wants a quick way to hook up multiple synths to mess around and record your creations, as well as a dedicated audio interface, I wholeheartedly recommend the Zoom L-12. As a whole package, I think that the value that the L-12 brings to the table for its price tag is pretty hard to beat. It has been entirely what was promised on the box, and except for a few small annoyances and so-so effects, I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon. Unless I can get a good deal on a Zoom L20, that is. As always, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I also want to thank my very first patrons for jumping in early to my newly released Patreon page, where you can help support this channel and which I hope will grow into an awesome community as well as a great resource for anyone into music, synths, and samplers. I hope you found this video useful, or at least entertaining. Have an awesome week. I'll see you next time.